Thanks. So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Wednesday, June the 21st, 2023. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581 and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. And I posted some pictures. If you go to the website and click on healing, hold on, I'm trying to go to it at the same time, so I give you the exact information. So if you go to healing and then go down to healing from the ground up, you'll see Homegrown Park and our Homegrown Park progress. And I posted a bunch of pictures. So it starts out with the hillside where we kind of chopped it up and blocked it off and put cardboard, and then we put mulch and soil and all kinds of stuff on it and smoothed it out, and then it goes to where we put in the archway and the grapes and the walkway, and we added plastic to kill grass that the cardboard hadn't killed. We've added all kinds of things to it, so we'll be putting on there. We've actually just expanded it another 700 square feet, and so we'll be putting information out there that you can keep up with our Homegrown Park and see how it's going. So we welcome you to the show. I hope that you're using the app. You can download it for free on your phone. Whether you have an Android or an iPhone, you can get the app for free from either store. And it's called Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And when you start typing in Heartland Aramaic, it'll come up with a glowing heart, and you click on that and download it. And it has the option to give us your name and email and phone number so we can add you to our mailing list. But if you don't click the box to add you, then we don't get the information. And all of your worksheets are free and private, and unless you download it to your phone, and then it's just on your phone, and you can print it. And there's only 2 requests that it asks for. The first one is to be able to use the internet for the app to work. And the second one, if you decide to download it or print it, then it needs access to a part of your phone to be able to do that. Other than that, it's totally private, and we hope that you're putting that to use. We've expanded it. There's the option to ask a question from any page and every page. And so we're there to support you in any way that we can. So I am going to continue reading from the chapter. This is out of Michael Singer's book called The Untethered Soul. And the chapter that we're reading is chapter 7. It's called Transcending the Tendency to Close. And what we were talking about yesterday is being able to be apart from the action, just an observer of what's going on, let the experiences come and go, and not be emotionally attached or to push them down. And in a little bit different way, he talks about that when we do suppress these, what did he call them? Let me find it here. Samskaras, and that's where he talks about, pushing the energy down and locking it into tissue, and then when it gets triggered and it comes up, and that you can either let it flow on through, or you can get lost in it again and make it a present experience. So he says the same thing we do, just uses a little bit different words. He hasn't used the word forgiveness yet or canceling the goal, but we'll see where it goes from here. So if you aren't centered, your consciousness is just following whatever catches its attention. Yeah, that was another thing, is that, you might be focusing on one thing, but if something else comes into your space that's either loud or like right out there, that it grabs your attention away from what you were concentrating on before. You could be meditating and then something happens and it pulls you out of your meditation and you start focusing on something else. So you see the car drive by and you're off doing something about it. Another day, and then it's all about the boat, and you forget about the car. There are people like that. They don't hold jobs very well, and relationships don't tend to work out for them. They're just all over the place with their energy, and it's very scattered. You have the ability to not go with any of these thoughts. You can just sit in the seat of consciousness and let go. A thought or emotion emerges. You notice it, and it passes by because you allow it to. This technique of freeing yourself is done with the understanding that thoughts and emotions are just objects of consciousness. Actually, Aria and I were talking about that this morning, and that she was pretending that one of her dolls was sad. And I'm like, okay, well, ask her what the thought is behind the sadness, and then tell her to change the thought to something that's happy. And she said, well, that it was not going to see her friend for a week. And I said, okay. I said, so change that thought to, oh, I get to see her again next week. So it's saying basically the same thing, but the focus is different. Instead of the focus being on loss, the focus is on what are you going to get then next week? You get to see her again. And so we're learning that and working on it. And a couple times this morning, she's told me to cancel a thought when I've said something that was not properly worded. And so I love that she's catching that now. So when Michael Singer talks about letting go, that's, being conscious of the goal and then canceling the goal. A thought or emotion emerges. You notice it, and it passes by because you allow it to. This, to freeing yourself, is done with the understanding that thoughts and emotions are just objects of consciousness. When you see your heart start getting anxious, and they're talking about the spiritual heart, but of course you can feel it physically in your physical heart, you are obviously aware of this experience. But who is aware? It is the consciousness, the indwelling being, the soul, the self. It is the seer and the one who sees. The changes you experience in your inner energy flow are simple objects of this consciousness. If you want to be free, then every time you feel any change in the energy flow, relax behind it. Don't fight with it. Don't try to change it. Don't judge it. Of course, he's using regulatory speech here. We would word it positively instead of negatively. But don't say, oh, I can't believe I'm still feeling this. I promised myself I wouldn't think about that car anymore. Don't do that. You'll just end up going with the guilt thoughts instead of the car thoughts. You have to let them all go. But it's not just about letting go of thoughts and emotions. It's actually about letting go of the pull that the energy itself has on your consciousness. The disturbed energy is trying to draw your attention into it. If you use your inner willpower to not go with it and just remain scared or just remain seated within, you will notice that the distinction between the consciousness and the object of consciousness is like night and day. They're totally different things. The object comes and goes, and the consciousness watches it come and go. And then the next object comes and goes while the consciousness watches it. Both objects came and went, but the consciousness didn't go anywhere. It stays constant and simply watches all of it. The consciousness experiences the creation of thoughts and emotions, and it has the clarity to see where they came from. It sees all of this without thinking about it. It sees what's going on inside as easily as it sees what's going on outside. It simply watches. The self is watching the inside energies change in accordance to both inside and outside forces. All the energies that it watches will just come and go unless you lose your center of consciousness and go with them. Take a slow motion look at what happens if you go with those energies. First, you start to have a thought or feeling. This feeling could be as subtle as your energy flow starting to tighten and become defensive, or it could be something much stronger. If these energies Capture your consciousness, and all the power of awareness gets focused on them. This power actually feeds them. Consciousness is a tremendously powerful force. When you concentrate on the thoughts and emotions, they become charged with energy and power. This is why thoughts and emotions get stronger the more attention is given to them. Let's say you feel a little jealousy or a little fear. If you focus on it, it grows in importance and demands more of your attention. And then because your attention feeds it, it becomes infused with even more energy and draws more attention. That's how the cycle goes. Eventually, what started as a passing thought or emotion can become the center of your entire life. If you don't let go, it can get completely out of control. A wise person remains centered enough to let go every time the energy shifts into a defensive mode. The moment the energy moves and you feel your consciousness start to get drawn into it, relax, release. Letting go means falling behind the energy instead of going into it. It just takes a moment of conscious effort to decide that you're not going there. You just let go. It's simple. It's simply a matter of taking the risk that you're better off letting go than going with the energy. When you're free from the hold that the energy has on you, you'll be free to experience the joy and expansiveness that exists within you. So you decide to use life to free yourself. You become willing to pay any price for the freedom of your soul. You'll realize that the only price that you have to pay is letting go of yourself. Only you can take inner freedom away from yourself and give it to yourself, Nobody else can. Doesn't matter what others do unless you decide it matters to you. Begin with small things. We tend to let ourselves get bothered by the little, meaningless things that happen every day. For example, somebody beeps at you at the stoplight. As these little things happen, you will feel your energy change. The moment you feel a change, relax your shoulders, relax the area around your heart. The moment the energy moves, you simply relax and release. Play with letting go and falling behind the sense of being bothered. Let's say someone at work took your pencil. You notice that every time you go to use another one, your inner energy shifts, even the slightest amount. Are you willing to release the old painful pencil in order to liberate yourself? Is this how you make freedom a game? Instead of getting into being bothered, you get into being free. When you reach for a pencil and you see yourself getting a little uptight, let go. Your mind might start saying, there was a pencil today. If I let go, they'll step all over me, and they'll be my desk tomorrow, or my house, or even my husband. That's how my mind talks. It's very melodramatic. But you decide that for the cost of a pencil, you'll go for the ride. You tell your mind, when it's the car, we'll have a talk. But right now, it's only the cost of a pencil to be free. Just decide that no matter what the mind says, you aren't getting involved. You don't fight the mind. In fact, you don't even try to change it. You just make a game out of relaxing in the face of its melodrama. You simply learn how to release the tendency for getting drawn into the energy. The root is where the consciousness is aware of the pulling of these energies. You will see that the energy does have the power to draw you in. Even once you decide you're not going to let it happen, it still has tremendous power over you. It happens at work, it happens at home, it happens with your children, with your husband or wife. It happens with everything and everybody all the time. Your opportunities to grow are endless. It's always there in front of you. Just commit to not letting the energy draw you in. When you feel the pull, like somebody pulling on your heart, just let go. You fall behind it. Simply relax and release. And no matter how many times you're pulled, that's how many times you relax and release. Because the tendency to get drawn in is constant. The willingness to let go and fall behind will be constant. Your center of consciousness is always stronger than the energy that is pulling on it. You just have to be willing to exercise your will. But it's not a fight or a struggle. It's not that you're trying to stop the energies from coming up inside. There is nothing wrong with feeling the energies of fear, jealousy, or attraction. It's not your fault that such energies exist. All the attractions, repulsions, thoughts, and feelings don't make any difference. They don't make you pure or impure. They are not you. You are the one who's watching, and that one is pure consciousness. Don't think you'd be free if you just didn't have those kinds of feelings. That's not true. If you can be free even though you're having those kinds of feelings, then you're really free, because there will always be something. If you can learn to remain centered with the smaller things, then you can see that you can also remain centered with the bigger things. Over time, you will find that you can even remain centered with the really big things. The types of events that destroyed you in the past can come and go, leaving you perfectly centered and peaceful. You can be fine deep inside, even in the face of deep sense of loss. There's nothing wrong with having peaceful and being peaceful and centered, as long as you're releasing the energy, not suppressing it. Ultimately, even if terrible things happen, you should be able to live without emotional scars and impressions. If you don't hold these issues inside, you can go about your life without getting psychologically damaged. No matter what events take place in life, it is always better to let go rather than to close. There is a place deep inside of you where the consciousness touches the energy. The energy touches the consciousness. That's where your work is. From that place, you let go. Once you've let go, every minute of every day, year after year, then that's where you'll live. Nothing will be able to take your seat of consciousness from you. You'll learn to stay there. After you've put years and years into this process and learn to let go no matter how deep the pain, you will achieve a great state. You will break the ultimate habit, the constant draw of the lower self. You will then be free to explore the nature and source of your true being, pure consciousness. And Michael, welcome to the show. The next chapter is called Freeing Yourself, more into the how-to in the next chapter.
Yay. Well, the section that resonates for me as you're reading this is the section in Course in Miracles where it talks about responsibility for sight. And it runs along these lines. I'm just opening it now. Basically what the Course says is, this is all you need to do for happiness. Complete escape from all pain and trauma. Say only this. To which the ego obviously responds, wow, yeah, that sounds good. I just have to say that, and then it's all done. And unfortunately, there's a little condition in there. It says, say only this, but mean it with no reservations. And that's where the work is, to get to that point. So here's the basic bottom line from the Course on responsibility for sight. It says, I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I've asked. You know, that basic statement, if you were brought up in the one world religion of universal religion of blame, is ridiculous, because you know that everybody else is at fault. But what the Course is saying here, this simple paragraph is saying is, you are a creator. Pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. We are each creators. I decide upon the goal I would achieve. Everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I've asked. Deceive yourself no longer that you're helpless in the face of what is done to you. Acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. Even this thing called the mind, oftentimes people talk about how the mind does this, the mind does that. The mind can only do what you've trained it to do. It's like you have to come to the point of responsibility for everything. Can't say, well, my mind, just went into all that trauma. Well, yes, my mind went into that trauma, but my mind has no volition. My mind can only do what it's been trained to do. So if every time X happens, my mind goes into trauma, it does that because I've trained it to go into trauma. And I need to both untrain it and remove the content that takes me into those trauma situations, those upset, disturbing situations. So it's really a powerful thought. Deceive yourself no longer that you are helpless. Now, of course, you can think helpless, and being a creator, you're right, you'll be helpless. But then, as the Course goes on here to say, acknowledge but that you've been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. It is impossible that the son or daughter of the Creator be merely driven by events outside of them. It is impossible that happenings come to you that were not your choice. The power of decision is the determiner of every situation in which you seem to find yourself by chance or accident. Now, we're going to make a distinction here between decision and choice. The Course here speaks of decision in the sense that it is choice, but in fact it isn't. Decision, the mind is a decision-making machine. If I say don't think about the color of your car, you don't choose to think about the color of your car. Brain cells fire in response to my voice. The law of resonance transfers energy to brain cells, and those brain cells fire. They take off. If I say, don't think about the front door of your house, what happens? Well, that's information that's in there. Automatically, that resonates, and the mind tends to move in that direction. That's called decision. Choice is a whole different thing. Choice is the ability to introduce something new to the mind that's never been seen in the mind before. So, actually, more properly, we could read this. The power of choice is the determiner of every situation in which you seem to find yourself by chance or accident. Of course, if the choice was made a long time ago and then forgotten, then that choice becomes a decision. It becomes something stored in the mind that the mind just spits out on command. And the command is something in resonance shows up with it. No accident nor chance is possible within the universe as the Creator created it. And outside of that, there is nothing. Suffer. And you decided that error was your goal. It can be a helpful video that links with this. If you haven't watched it, or even if you have, it might be time to look at it again. If you go to our YouTube channel, and you can get there by going to our website, whyagain.org, and you'll see the list of social media links. Hit the YouTube channel. That'll take you to our channel. Or you can just go to YouTube and type in Michael Ryce, R-Y-C-E, and then look for the video Responsibility for Sight. Pardon me, I shifted there. Responsibilities for sight is the topic we're talking here, but the video that would be useful at this stage would be the one, What is the World? So if you tap into that, What is the World, it talks more about the way the mind works, the way resonance works, and how to remove content from the mind. And of course, the focal point, it seems, for much of Michael's writing here at this point is to develop the ability to just be able to step apart from your mind. Again, to become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feeling, the actor apart from the actions. And so a really powerful place to go is into that place where you're willing to throw out all thoughts based in somebody else is responsible for what's moving in me. That happened, therefore I'm upset. No, that didn't happen, therefore you're upset. You held that upset in you, and that upset in you set you up for that, whatever that was, to happen. And of course your mind responded with its upset. When you realize the power of resonance in our world, it's profoundly, profoundly powerful to recognize that energetically we draw things to us that match, especially what we're not wanting to, what we're not willing to deal with. Well, Michael, why would that be? If I don't want to deal with it, why would that be the thing that comes to me? Well, how many times have you pushed that one down? And each time you push it down, you add energy to it. Imagine I've got a 3-foot diameter spring. It stands 3 feet tall. It stands on the floor. Can that spring do anything? No. But if I push down on it and lock it, I've stored some potential energy in it. If I push down on it again and lock it, and again and again and again and again, what happens when I let that lock go? It takes off because of all the potential that's been stored in it by pushing it down. So if there are experiences that we run from that we don't want to deal with, by doing so, we actually energize those patterns within ourselves, which then, again, through resonance, draws somebody in to play them out with us. And if you recognize that happening in your life, of course, that's the place to apply forgiveness. That's the place to collapse the pained content, to face and through forgiveness, collapse or remove that pained content. And consciously, purposely introduce, and this is the power of choice, introduce to your mind something totally, completely different. Perhaps something that's never been seen before. If somebody does a behavior that resonates upset, and most people just go off, flapping their jaw about their upset and how somebody else did it to them. That's the power of decision. The power of choice is, here I am once again wanting to blame somebody else for what's moving in me. I think I'll apply forgiveness here, take responsibility for this, and shift into a different dynamic rather than just keep playing this out unconsciously. So that's the bottom line of this work. And that's where we want to head. Ms. Jeanie, does that resonate? Any thoughts for you?
Exactly right on, for sure. And I think that kind of goes along with some of the conversation that a couple of people have been having over the last few days, and that is actually one of the things that Magda had said when she was talking to Dr. Kim was, the difference of, meditating and sending love to someone, whether it's, Putin or whoever in the world, and realizing that even when she was doing that, she still had a goal for them to change. And, even though it was like mentally tossing a lot of love towards them, it was not necessarily for the highest and best, but it was for what she wanted, how she wanted them to do or how she wanted them to act, And so underlying things like that is still the thought of what they're doing not being right, and it may not be right, and they may, need to be held accountable. However, focusing even on that makes more of it. A lot of people I've heard say, well, I don't want to do the worksheets because that's putting energy into, whatever the issue is. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're still holding, if you're holding that inside still, you're still putting energy in it by pushing it down. So by not doing a worksheet on it or not facing it is not going to make it go away. So.
Well, and the whole idea of the worksheet when you recognize there's another powerful line in the Course that says, you may wonder why you must look upon your hatred and realize its full extent. And then it goes on to talk about how the reason for that is because those things that show up in the surface mind don't stand on their own. There's a foundation under them. And when one engages in the forgiveness process, it's not just a matter of focusing into something negative that happened, but rather it's a matter of opening the veil, opening the barrier that allows the hidden part of the mind to come to the surface, to become acquainted with and de-energize the hidden part of the mind. The more it's hidden, the more it's like pushing down on the spring and locking it and adding energy to it. So the forgiveness process, where especially when you are following the prompts on the worksheet to breathe, are de-energizing the things that create issues in your life, de-emphasizing the energy, weakening the energy, so that one has a more powerful ability to be conscious of what they're introducing into their minds and conscious of what's moving in their minds. So, any thoughts, Miss Jeanie?
The only other thought that I had was when I was reading out of Michael Singer's book, and he was talking about, a car cutting you off or zipping by you, instead of getting lost in the energy of, oh, look at that driver and what they did. Something that I do, and it actually creates a giggle in me, is that if somebody zips by me, I did this the other day, I think you were in the car, and I said, oh my, they must have to go to the bathroom really bad. Put it in your mind that they've got something else going on. It's not about me, and just because they zipped around me may not have had anything to do with me driving the speed limit or being in front of them. They may just be totally thinking of something else, like, I need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And that helps you get a giggle to it and lets go of any energy instead of attaching a meaning to it. A lot of people do and say things, and they don't even realize you're in their space, and yet we take it personal, whatever it is that they did. And that's always based on something that happened to us in the past. And so we think, oh, it was personal back then, so it's personal now. And we turn it into a present experience, and it's not. And Yinka is with us in the chat room, and she did just send us an email with the PowerPoints for tomorrow's book club. And if somebody out there has not participated in that book club, the information's on the website. You can just go to Schedule and Global Book Club, and the sign-in information is there. Michael participates in it on the second and fourth Thursday of every month, and they're going through the Why Is This Happening to Me Again, chapter by chapter, and I think you're up to chapter 6 or 7.
6, I believe, yes.
So, be a part of that. So that information, the login information, is all on the website, so you can participate. We have people from all over the globe, and that's at 3:30 Eastern Time, 8:30 London Time. So be part of everything that's offered to you. There are so many tools out there and so much being offered to help you and support you, and that's why we're here on this show. And, people, I've seen some that'll send a text and say, I raised my hand. Yeah, but you waited to the last 3 minutes of the show, and we were already in the middle of a conversation with someone else. Oh, Yinka just said chapter 6, but this week we'll be going through a worksheet. That's right. So thank you for bringing that reminder up. So anyway, if you've got a question, press 1 now, because we've got 27 minutes. We have plenty of time to give you all of the time that you need to address, whatever's up for you, or whatever comment or question. Or, don't wait till the last 3 minutes and then press 1. Self-sabotage.
Well, there's another section on the Course in Miracles that had a strong inclination to go through. And so if we don't have any hands up, I think we'll talk about that.
Okay, there are no hands
so
up.
this section's called, okay, the development of trust. And he's talking about people who choose to become people who would teach the truth about who we are as love. The line of the Course is, teach only love, for that is what you are. And that there's a process to go through in developing trust. And they lay the process out in a pretty interesting fashion. First, one must go through what might be called a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it is usually so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away, and it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognized. How can a lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light? He is not yet at the point at which he can make the shift entirely internally. And so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the teacher of love has learned that much, they go on to the second stage. Now, the teacher of love must go through a period of sorting out. This is usually somewhat difficult. Having learned that changes in life are always helpful, one must now decide all things on the basis of whether they increase the helpfulness or hamper it. He will find that many, if not most of the things he valued before, will merely hinder his ability to transfer what he's learned to new situations as they arise. Because he's valued what is really valueless. You know, it's interesting that most people carry around a whole list of defenses, and they put value in those defensive, never realizing that when they value their defenses, they're spending their creative energy on creating something to be defensive about. You know, one of the early lessons in the Course is, in my defenselessness, my power and safety lie. And recognizing with this law of resonance that if I'm defensive about something, then there's an energy in me that I'm continuously broadcasting. I'm continuously radiating about defense. And as long as that energy is moving in me, somebody's going to show up to play it out for me. So to let go of the value of valuing things like defenses and value living as a true human being, value responding to life as love would respond to life, becomes a whole different game. So you decide all things on the basis of whether they increase helpfulness or hamper it. One will find that many, if not most of the things they valued before, merely hinder the ability to transfer what's been learned to new situations as they arise. Because this person has valued what is really valueless, he or she will not generalize the lesson for fear of loss and sacrifice. It takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. It is only to the extent which they are helpful that any degree of reality should be accorded them in this world of illusion. The word value can apply to nothing else. The third stage through which the teacher of love must go through is called, or can be called, a period of relinquishment. If this is interpreted as giving up the desirable, it will tend to engender enormous conflict. Few teachers of love escape this distress entirely. There is, however, no point in sorting out the valuable from the valueless unless the next obvious step is taken. Therefore, the period of overlap is apt to be one in which the teacher of love feels called upon to sacrifice his own best interests on behalf of truth. He has not realized, as yet, how wholly impossible such a demand would be. He can learn this lesson only as he actually does give up the valueless. Through this, one learns that where they anticipated grief, they find a happy lightheartedness instead. And where one thought something was asked of him, he finds a gift bestowed. Next comes a period of settling down. This is a quiet time in which the teacher of love rests a while in reasonable peace. Now he or she consolidates their learning. Now one begins to see the transfer value of what has been learned. Its potential is literally staggering, and the teacher of love is now at the point in his or her progress at which they see their whole way out. Give up what you do not want and keep what you do. How simple is the obvious, and how easy to do. The teacher of love needs this period of respite. He or she has not come yet as far as they think. And yet, when they are ready to go on, they go with mighty companions beside them. But now one rests a while and gathers those companions before going on. No one goes on from this point alone. The next stage is indeed a period of unsettling. Now must the teacher of God understand that he did not really know what was valuable and what was valueless. All that he'd really learned so far was that he did not want the valueless, and that he did want the valuable. Yet his own sorting out was meaningless in teaching him the difference. The idea of sacrifice, so central to one's thought system, has made it impossible for them to judge. One thought they had learned willingness, but now they see that they do not know what the willingness is for. And now one may attain a state that may remain impossible to reach for a long, long time. He or she must learn to lay aside judgment and only ask what they really want in every circumstance. Were not each step in this direction so heavily reinforced, it would be hard indeed. And finally, there's a period of achievement. It is here that learning is consolidated. Now what was seen as merely shadows before becomes solid gains to be counted on in all emergencies, as well as in tranquil times. Indeed, their tranquility is their result. The outcome of honest learning, consistency of thought, and full transfer. This is a stage of real peace. For here is the state, that kingdom of love fully reflected. From here, the way to what people call heaven, the community of love, is open and easy. In fact, it is here. It is never left. Anywhere, if peace of mind was already complete. And who would seek to change tranquility for something more desirable? What could be more desirable than this? Giving up the attachment to irritation, to the desire to blame, the desire to complain, or the actual act of complaining. Giving up all of the verbiage, literally the language that relates to disturbance and upset. and choosing in every circumstance, even where there's trauma going on, to value a tranquil mind, a mind connected with love, more than valuing a mind connected to upset that can tell a whole big story that one is a victim. So there's a lot of giving up to be done in this process of learning trust. And it's a lesson, in my experience, that comes back around in many different ways over time. It's not learned just once. This cycle, one does not go through just once, but goes through it layer by layer by layer, each time developing a deeper appreciation for the serenity that follows. So we're here to hold the space and to join you in that serenity. And if there's some way that we can support you, I'll call a number again if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you. It's 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show directly. And if you have a question for us, push 1 and let's have a conversation. So if you're out there in listener land, what's on your mind? Let's hear from you. What's happening in your world? Is there anywhere we can offer you some refinements, or where you perhaps can offer us some refinements? This ongoing process, the layers and levels of achieving this called trust, has many depths and many levels to it. And for me, what I've found is that as I go through those layers and move into those deeper levels of trust, the settled state, just resting in a state of connectedness and harmony, is so different than attempting to rest in a state where the mind has always got something to whine and complain about. The idea of forgiving, the ability to even be in disturbance for most is just something that's like, well, wait a minute, but there's so many things to be disturbed about. Well, that's one of the big lies of the mind. There's nothing to be disturbed about in the world. Oh, Michael, you haven't been watching all the crazy, hey, I'm with you. There is so much crazy stuff going on right now. It's beyond belief. But that's not a reason to be disturbed. That's just being aware there's some crazy stuff going on. If I bring a quiet, serene, connected mind to a crazy world, then I make a contribution called silence and serenity to the crazy world. I can create support for assisting and supporting people in processing through the crazies, which most of the world are trapped in. So joining you in breathing and in that state of serenity. And what's on your mind? Push 1. Any other thoughts for you, Miss Jeanie?
Well, there was actually, I just thought of the 3 movies that we have seen lately. Actually, one was a series called The Outlander, and it's not the regular Netflix series. This was, and actually, I don't know that it was a, it was a movie. It wasn't a series, and that there was, he has a ship he's from a far off world, and he crashes on Earth during, I don't know when it was, back in the Ice Age or whatever, but anyway, on the ship he had an alien predator with him called the Morin, and I got to thinking, this man had to, before he could find the forgiveness, because what he one of the things he talks about in it is that they went to where this so-called predator lived, and they tried to kill them all and take their land, kind of like, you know, they did in Avatar, kind of like what happens on this planet. And he got to the point of, you know, the predator is just trying to save his own land. It's his, and they took it from him, and they killed them, you know, calling them the enemy or whatever. But anyway, it had a really good story, but he had to crash and face his own inner demon before he could get to the point where he could actually have compassion even for the predator. And then we watched another one that was kind of comical called Chupa, and it was also on Netflix. But this young boy finds this creature. It looks like of some kind with wings, and he befriends it and tries to, you know, reach out to it and save it and look at something different, you know, other than what the norm is. And he develops a strength within himself because he reaches out to this other creature. And then last night we watched one called 17, and this boy who constantly gets in trouble, and he's in juvenile detention, and there's a shelter dog that befriends him, and he learns to reconnect with his older brother and settle a lot of things that were going on inside himself. And so facing, you know, like the darkness, and then overcoming it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Each one of them
different.
Brought it around to that of there comes a point where you have to embrace and face what's going on inside of you.
Oh, there is
and
a
that's
question
one
in
of
the chat room.
Basic messages of the course. Great. Let's say hello to the chat.
Okay, Jeanka, she says, question today. I was talking to someone who felt like giving up on doing worksheets as their life doesn't seem to be getting any better. What advice would you give, or would you do a worksheet on it?
Well, one of the things that I've observed over the years and have done myself is you do worksheets on doing worksheets. Some people are like, I don't want to, resistance. No, I don't want to go there. And then the other thing is to recognize, you know, if you say to someone, well, let's see, this issue you're thinking about, when's the first time you can remember having a disturbance, something like that? And oftentimes people say, well, you know, I can remember that when I was a kid. It was, you know, 40 years ago. And, you know, thinking in terms of the book, why is this happening to me again? How many times have you been through that? Oh, geez, I can't even count how many times that's happened to me. And so what you want to do is you want to do one worksheet, and you want something that took you, well, by the way, let me ask a different question. Do you remember ever watching any of the authorities in your life go through anything? Oh, yeah, I can remember my father used to complain about this same thing all the time. So in essence, what you're telling me is you're looking at a generational pattern that you've just identified, and you know it's gone on for at least 4 decades in your life, and it went on in at least one of your parents' lives. And you've done 2 worksheets on it, and you want it to be done? Cannot process an issue that has a greater amount of trauma than the level of vitality that they have. And so it takes willingness. You go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and they said to him, you know, how many of these darn worksheets do we have to do? How many times do I have to forgive as to my brother? Is 7 times enough? And Yeshua's answer in Aramaic is no, 77 times 70. How many times will you have to look to process through every layer of this issue? And standing in the space of willingness to be patient with yourself, developing, you know, whenever there's a lack of patience, oh, I'm not going to bother doing another one of those. There's the next worksheet on patience. And so if you realize, especially, you know, for most people who tap into this work, they're early adopters. They're the first in the family system to ever really start to look at life and think in this way. And the first to actually recognize that forgiveness is something other than letting other people off the hook for what's moving in us. And if you realize you're the early adopter, you're at the end of a pattern of pained experiences that in many cases, in many family systems has been going on for generations and generations and generations. Have patience and go through the process. I've seen people who came to the point of frustration, they started to do this work and then literally ran away, disappeared. And I've seen it take 10 years for them to come back. And the one person I'm thinking of, it was a 10-year period, and this woman contacted me. She'd done a significant amount of the work over a period of just a couple of months, and then, kind of felt like, well, this isn't moving fast enough. I'm going to go on and do something else. And about 10 years later, she called me, and she said, I was getting a book from my bookshelf, and your book fell off the shelf and hit me in the head. And so I decided it was time to read it again. I sat down and read it. And by the way, when's your next intensive? I need to get to an intensive. And it was like, couldn't move fast enough to get the next level of her work. So resistance often comes up, and that's another topic for worksheets. But patience is a definite goalpost along the way to develop the patience to be with the process, to trust the process, and to embrace what are often generational patterns. Also, just, tapping into support can be a real key in the process. If one's off doing this on their own, the mind can come up with all sorts of reasons why this couldn't possibly work, I couldn't possibly make progress, and therefore stay in the same cycle. But, if it's been going on for decades or generations, it's not going to end overnight. It's just that simple.
She said that what you said is exactly what's going on for them. They went into talking about the father and all the things he had said and done, and she said it actually opened up a worksheet for her as she got annoyed with them for continually complaining regardless of what was offered to them, and that there was reason for it and why it wasn't going to work.
And the layers just
a lot of people
peel out. And of course, you didn't get annoyed with anybody. You've never, I've never, nobody's ever been annoyed with anybody else. But if there's annoyance in there, anybody can bring it up, and we can put it into our brain's image of anyone. And of course, if annoyance comes up and you want to live without it, then you work to forgive your annoyance. So next worksheet. So I hope that helps.
And there are a lot of people who want to stay a victim. And it's like, if I do worksheets and clear this issue up, then who am I going to be?
Yep. Yeah, the old victim self, its experience, 2,000 years ago, Yeshua talked about in order for you to live, you've got to die. And when that old self starts to fall apart, it can be very threatening and experienced as a very real death. And it's just part of the process. One of the things you might do, Yinka, is invite that person to join us tomorrow. And, if they've got more specific questions, perhaps that'd be a good part of the conversation. And or maybe they'll be the subject for the worksheet if they'd like to do it. And by the way, if anybody wants to join us for that tomorrow, it'll be at 3 o'clock. Pardon me, 3:30, right?
3:30.
3:30. 3:30 tomorrow Eastern Time, 8:30 if you're in London, England, where the Yinka has her book study club. And so join us. If you go to the notes, I'm sure Jeanie's already got a link in there, and or you can go to our events page on whyagain.org, whyagain.org, and the link will be there for the Zoom call. Come join us, and it'll also go into the archives. We're going to do a step-by-step walk somebody through a worksheet tomorrow in the show, the book study club. Well, we're down to the last minute, so I'm just going to say thank you very much for joining us. I hope each of you has the best year yet of your eternal life, and hope we'll see you tomorrow's show and for the Hear My Voice Book Club at 3:30